Harry, it's our first show. We've never done this before. I'm going to give a bit of
Hello.
context. We haven't even named the show yet. Hopefully, by the time this goes live, this show will have a name. We just had a few musings offline. But to bring everyone together, we're hoping this show is going to explore pretty much everything and everything that's associated with working well, with the mind, with productivity, with that inner voice, with performance. And we're going to talk about book reviews. We're going to talk about gadgets, and you'll discover probably some of those even during today's session, because we had a brief chat about that already, how we have me offline. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be an exciting exploration. Now, this started to give some foundation. You and I recently sat down. We had a Thai curry. Yourself was vegan,
Yeah.
mine wasn't, which was the start of an early debate. We were the first in the restaurant. We were the last to leave. And we just chatted like this the whole way through and debated a lot as well. And you thought, you know
That's true.
what? This is a subject we're both really, really passionate about. Maximizing performance, getting control of our mindset, achieving goals and objectives, being healthy, living longer, being a good friend, being a good parent, all the things and the inner voices and little battles we have with ourselves. And we had such good conversation. We thought, let's bring this into a podcast. Let's bring this into a video. And we think we've got the credentials to do that. And we hope people are going to join
Hopefully.
us.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm going
I
to
mean, that's the
start
thing. Yeah.
very
That's the thing.
easily.
I think, we can talk for a long time, and that's probably why I speak for a living, because I end up chatting and chatting and chatting. So I think I always have interesting chats with you, and I think hopefully the listeners will, having that eavesdrop onto almost like a private conversation that we're having, are going to get some insights and nuggets that I think like we always walk away with when we have our chats together over the last 12, 13 years now that we've been friends, which has been interesting.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you what, let's start there, because you just said you speak for a living. Let's for those that will not be familiar with either of us, I'm going to start with you, Harry. Give the audience, the listeners, those watching on audio or listening on audio, a little bit of background to who you are, what you're up to, your journey, and why I think you're the perfect foil for the conversation that's going to work alongside me over the next how many other episodes.
Yeah, so my name is Harry Kalymnios. It's a difficult one to pronounce, that surname, even my friends struggle with. But yeah, I guess what I would call myself is a health and vitality coach, speaker, author, trainer. For me, I'm really passionate about all the things I can do to make myself and others around me think, feel, and unlock that inner superhuman within them. And when I say superhuman, people always get a bit kind of confused with what I mean. And really what I mean by that is, when you feel at your best self, those days that everything's clicking for you, how can you feel like that more often? Because a lot of the time we think that's by accident, and really it's not. There are certain things that we put into place that make us feel better. And my journey really, I would say, started probably about 15, 20 years ago, but I suppose in earnest when I met you, right? Around 2010 we met.
Yeah.
And at the time that we met, it's interesting because we met in September, really. That's when we did our first trip together. And that was my last month of work at the London Stock Exchange. So I was still working at the London Stock Exchange. I've been there for about 6 years. And I was getting made redundant. And it was a process that had been going on for a few months. And I kind of wanted it. But it gave me the opportunity, taking that redundancy, to investigate things that I was really interested in, such as NLP, like neuro-linguistic programming. So I went on some courses, got my master practitioner on that. I started down this rabbit hole of a journey of personal development. And then that led me to understand more about health and well-being as I started seeing these amazing people around who were living quite well into their 50s, 60s, 70s, and what they were doing differently. And that led me this whole journey into health and well-being, really. And so when I started learning things that I had not realized before, I wanted to share them. And I always thought to myself, it would be a real shame if everything I learned died with my brain, right? That is not, like, the only reason in my view to learn something is so that you can then go and share it with someone else. And so I thought to myself, how best to do that? And I went to a talk, actually. It was at this place called the Yes Group, which was a personal development community, which many years later I ended up leading. But at that point, I was just going and attending. And one of the speakers that came said, like, rather than talk one-to-one to people, you should talk one to many. because it's a lot better use of your time. A bit like what we're doing now, right? We're having these conversations in a pub in St Albans or in a Thai restaurant in St Albans, and no one's really eavesdropping and listening in. And so this is a way of getting that out. And he said, like, you should maybe think about learning to speak, right? So I started going to this thing called Toastmasters, which is like the public speaking group. And that got me learning how to speak in public. And then he also suggested writing books. So I wrote my first book. And then I started speaking and getting gigs in different places, all for free initially, going to meetups and just using every opportunity to speak about the ideas and philosophies that I'd come up with, whether it was to do with health, mindset, leadership, life hacks, all of these things. And that's really what led me down the journey of now where I am speaking in terms of well-being, health, mindset, resilience, to corporates, to organizations, and also teaching public speaking to students at 15 years old. So
let me do a bit of a sell as well, because I've known you now, say, for 10 years. You are an author. For those watching on video, he's written a book called The Thought Gym. He's written another book called Working Well. He's just written a huge manifesto, of what a better word, which hasn't been published yet, but due to come out. And this is something that you live and breathe now, right? You're fully immersed in the world of health and well-being, which I love. And we have a lot of synergy in what we like and what we enjoy. One of those being gadgets, and we often talk about what the latest fad is, what the latest gadget is you're trying. Harry has everything under the sun. I have a lot of gadgets like playing with as well, and we're going to explore some of those over some of the episodes. We're both keen readers. I have to say that Harry's reading list, which he shared with me at that Thai restaurant, was insane. But we've been sharing books and things that we've been reading as well. When all
You've got quite a nice collection of books behind you. You've got quite a nice books behind you there. I see those as well. I mean,
got a few here.
My reading list, as you know, I'm quite structured in a way. And so I just wrote down pretty much every book I read since 2011. And I went for a reading frenzy, I think, for 4 years where I was reading a book a week. So
it's a big list. 50 books. That probably puts a little bit of context in how we're slightly different as well, right? So we and Harry first met when Harry is someone who likes to plan. I think that's fair. But I wouldn't say procrastinate, it's unfair, but you like to make sure everything's orderly and set up and ready. I'm a bit more of, let's do it straight away. Let's not hang around. I'm very objective focused, goal orientated. And we first met when I decided, for no reason whatsoever, that I wanted to ride London to Paris. But like Harry likes to share the word, I like to share experiences. So I decided randomly to put this invitation out to anyone that wanted to come. I put it out on Facebook, put it out on social media. And lo and behold, on the first day we went, 20 odd people rocked up that I'd never met before, some way better cyclists than I was. I had planned some Google Maps that we ended up following, which weren't to scale. It was a learning journey. My wife drove the support vehicle. We bunged all our bags in, and we cycled to Paris with very little planning. In fact, so much little planning that Harry once did one of his Toastmaster presentations on how bad my planning was, which was interesting, and he shared it with me. That's absolutely true. But there's some truth in the sense that I like to get off and just do things. So I'll read. I'm a very much let's go. So I came up with this idea with Harry like a couple of weeks ago, and now we are already recording our first episode with not a huge amount of planning, which may or may not come through.
I think that's what makes you a good entrepreneur, though, as well. Is that you just get out there, break some things, and then work it out later, sort of thing, as it were, right? And that's a good thing to have. That's a good thing to have.
I hope so. So to give some credibility to what I do, so I run a successful business. It's a multi-million-pound turnover business. So I'm CEO of that firm. I've won CEO of the year for the sector that I work in. So hopefully, well received in that industry. In fact, recently, only a month ago, just won the Leaders Leader Award, which was voted on by my owner peers, which is always nice.
Congratulations! I saw that.
Thank you very much. So that was quite good. I've got a master's in theatre, of all things, but I've also got 2 other postgraduate qualifications. I've got one in executive coaching and mentoring, which is something I'm really, really passionate about. And I've also got another master's in management consulting. So a lot of these books are all about frameworks, 7 C's of consulting, or different management philosophies and so on and so forth, or their coaching books, or their leadership books, or their time planning books, or whatever they might be. So me and Harry just have a huge passion for trying to improve ourselves and trying to do that to meet certain objectives. For those interested of maybe following us now and you've got goals in your life that you want to achieve, I think our conversations are going to be quite useful. for example, one was obviously wanted to ride London to Paris. Well, we got that done. And then next 6-7 years, every year we did another cycle tour. And that between the two of us, we've cycled most of Europe now. Nice to Pisa, London to Paris, Venice to Zagreb, Albania, and so on.
9. We've done 9 in total. I think I missed a couple, but you've done 9.
Yeah.
That's 9.
Several thousand kilometers. I've completed an Ironman in under 10 hours. I'm a parent of 2 wonderful children. I was 3rd in the world in obstacle course racing, which is actually a thing in my age group in the World Championships in Canada. And this year I qualified to compete at the World Championships in Ironman 70.3. This is all obviously whilst running a company, whilst doing my courses, whilst studying and whilst coaching and various other things.
I want to express to the listeners, people listening, right? And I say this to people all the time, actually, Nick. I go, you are the fittest person I know, but not only just the fittest, also the way that your mind works when it comes to like exercise and training is just phenomenal, which is why, like, you know, sometimes I've always banged on about you. I'm sure we'll talk about water at some stage. I'm still curious to know whether you drink water, because like Nick did all these things and I still don't think he's doing, he can optimize even more in certain areas, right? With some of the things we'll talk about, I'm sure. And it's just, it always astounds me how you can do the things you do. And I read some of your Instagram stuff a while back for this, for the triathlon thing that you were talking about, where you hired this coach and you said, right, I've got X amount of hours to train each week or something, and I'm running the business and I'm doing this. And I'm, like, Nick does everything, listeners, right? He has these he's got the businesses, but he's got the side hustles, and he's doing all these other extracurricular stuff, like I mean, you were doing a acting thing at one point, you know, with the
I've just written the Limpstone Village.
And you're writing a play, yeah.
2023. Come and see it. It's on in December the 1st. I've written that from scratch. That was way harder than I anticipated, by the way. I shouldn't have taken it.
I'm just amazed. And then also you've got all these masters, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing another masters or something. So I'm always amazed at like just how you're accomplishing all you accomplish, right? Because I guess I'm kind of like, I have done triathlons in the past, but nothing on your level. I've done, like, you know, the London triathlon, and I've done one marathon. Sure. But you, like, the thing is with you, and I guess this goes to, you're all in a lot of the time when you do something, like, you're all in, right? When you got into triathlon, you went all in on triathlon. Then you went to obstacle course racing for about 3 or 4 years, and you know, you're suddenly top in your age group in the world doing those sorts of things. And then you went back to triathlon after a 10-year break, and you're suddenly at the World Championships again. And then another time you run a 100-mile race in like ridiculously fast amount of time, wasn't it? Was it a 100-mile race or something like that you did?
Yeah, that was 100 kilometers. That was Hadrian's Wall. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, but you know what? This probably links to what we're talking about. I mean, you've made me very humbled by what you just said there, Harry, and I appreciate that. And we do respect each other a lot. But I'm a big believer in, if you really want to, this is a good test of motivation. A lot of people say they want to do things, right? I want to run my first 5K. The distance doesn't matter. I want to write my first book, but I haven't got the time. Now, I don't believe time is ever an excuse. If you want to do something enough, it's not about time, it's about motivation. So you got to understand or know what the motivations are for doing something. Now, I have to say, I drive my family and my friends potty, right? Because these hobbies often cost a lot of money. So I'm always buying new gadgets, new bikes, and I move on to the next thing, and I'll buy a kayak, and then I'll do that for a month and do something, and it can drive people mad. But I have these goals, I have these reasons. My newest one now, I've just taken up golf, and I'm just started to play tennis, and how am I going to fit all these things in? And I don't know yet, but I know that the motivation's strong enough to make the time for those things to happen. Well, I think a lot of that is just people want to do it, but don't know their why enough. Haven't quite discovered.
This is what I was saying to people, is that, and I was talking to someone literally before I came on the call with you. I've got a mentoring group that I've just started mentoring, so teenagers from around the world, and we meet for an hour every 2 weeks, and we were talking about time and saying you can't make time and you can't create time, but you have to take time, which means you're taking time from somewhere else, because at the end of the day we all have 24 hours in the day. So in order for you to find that hour to play tennis, you can't find it, you have to take it from something else. Now, what are you taking it from? That could be sitting on the couch watching Netflix, or it could be commuting, or it could be whatever the thing is, but it has to come from somewhere. And I'm a bit like that, in that I've got lots of different interests, which was also a blessing and a curse, and kind of fed into my health and well-being philosophy, is that I was never anyone that was really super into any one thing. So like when I was at school, I was pretty good at all sports, but not like the best in the school at any one sport. I was pretty much near the top in all subjects, but not necessarily what I'd say the best in any subject. And that kind of, and I think it was always for me, it was that by going all in on one thing, am I missing out on the other opportunities? Whereas someone like you go all in on one and then you go all in on the other. So you actually do get all the opportunities, but you're kind of compartmental.
Yeah, but there's something in that, right? And what you just mentioned is a quote which I have to think about a lot because with all the things I put on my plate. One is when I say yes to something, what am I saying no to?
Yeah.
All right. And having that thought concept, if anyone is listening to this or watching this and they've got plans, try and analyze when you say yes to that, when you add that other monkey onto your back to take on another challenge or another project, what are you saying no to? Now, in my life, I've got my own coach, which I speak to, who helps me a lot with this, because every time I say yes to a new challenge, Ironman in particular last year, my target was to go under 10 hours. I wanted to see if I could go quicker in my 40s than I could in my 30s. Now I achieved that goal, which is great. But in achieving that, it involved a lot of training, and that training meant less time with my family. So when I said yes to being on a bike for 4 hours on a Saturday, that's saying no to being with my son for 4 hours on a Saturday. Yeah. So weighing this stuff up. So I made a commitment to my family that I'll do it for 1 year only. And this year I'm not doing any more full Ironman because that was almost like a contract that I set with my wife. That the will was there to do it, but I can't do that every year because I'm saying no to the things actually that are also really important to me. So I think the idea of when you say yes, what you're saying no to is something that'd be quite useful.
Oh yeah, I remember. I think I first heard. I think it was Richard Branson say that somewhere, and that was really kind of profound to me because I was thinking, yeah, if you say yes to this, you're actually saying no to 1,000 other things that you could be doing. So like, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no because
I love that hell yes or no.
Yeah, it's either hell yes or no because otherwise you have to deny other things. But actually, I did want to ask you because it's quite interesting because you're definitely, at least appears to me, because like many high achievers, and this is kind of goes to a bit of what we're talking about in the podcast because we're talking about high performance, high achievers and stuff, but going from goal to goal to goal, where it's like the goal is the thing. Whereas I think for me, it used to be that in a way, but now I'm very much more, the goal is the process, not the end result. Because otherwise, and it's like this famous thing of like, the astronauts who make it to the moon, right? Suddenly, a lot of them ended up becoming alcoholics and depressed because suddenly, by the time 45 years old, they've achieved, I mean, how much more can you do than land on the moon, right? And suddenly they've got the goal that they worked all their life towards, or you could argue like professional sports players, right? By the time they're 30,
Wilkinson kicked the goal and then had the biggest bout of depression after that kick, right? Won the World Cup. 10 minutes later, he's the most depressed he's ever been.
And so do you feel like you're that kind of person that is going, because you are kind of very goal oriented, you've got that fitness goal, whereas my fitness goals now are to do with, I guess what I call the lifestyle Olympics, or what I think Peter Thier, longevity expert, talks about senior Olympics or something. It's like, when I'm older, can I do basic things like get up from the floor, like put my bag in my overhead compartment of the aeroplane, get up and down the stairs. And it used to be that I was into, doing the marathons, doing the triathlons and going from goal to goal. But the last probably decade, my main goals in exercise have been just to have longevity and flexibility and movement. And my big goal, if you like, ever was our cycle trips that we haven't done for a few years now. But that was my big physical goal of the year, really. And now it's very much not like that. And I feel like my goal is the process, because if all you do is live for the goal, then you get, now what? Once you get it,
I get it. I mean, you've got to enjoy the journey for sure. I mean, I think we're different in some of those things. I mean, if I felt the same as you, I would be stretching every time I did exercise, which I don't do. And I've got, I don't foam roll. I don't do, I've just started doing.
Try getting into yoga.
Yeah, I'm trying again.
This is another example of you're very much like, you're like, I'm doing 30 minutes every day, and you're like,
I'll give it a go.
Whereas I'm very much more of a kind of go slowly kind of thing, and have
I think
that.
if I try something for 2 weeks solid or 30 days solid, and if I don't then adopt it as a habit, it's not for me. And I'll do anything for 30 days. Let's see if my body then goes, I want to do this. But after 30 days, I want to keep going. I'll keep going. If I don't, I'll drop it and try something else. But I think you talk about the journey and the goal. Look, I've definitely changed in this. I went through some trauma 12, 13 years ago. And I think that's changed my outlook on a lot of things. And there's a Latin phrase called solvitur, I think it's solvitur ambulando. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a Latin phrase. It basically means it can be solved by walking. So taking that a level further, for my own mindset, for my way that clears my head, I clear it through exercise, through running, listening to podcasts, being in the fresh air, cycling, and just being in my own headspace. So I think that's a big part of it. So I try and pick goals that allow me to create that the exercise that's going to contribute to clearing that mind with a target. If there's no target at the end of it, I won't get out and go for a run. I have to have a reason to go and do a run. So I'll pick a race, and then usually it's something big and that keeps me motivated for the course of a year, like a sub 10 Ironman, which is a big goal by anyone's standards, I think, and just push for it. If I don't hit it, I can deal with that, providing I feel like I've put the work in. And I think in terms of, I'll tell you, actually, I've still got it on. If you can see it, I've still got this little band on here, little green band. It's an athlete band. Genuinely, in 13 years of competing in different sports, relatively decent age group levels, the best I've ever felt crossing a finishing line was the world champs in St. George this year, 70.3. I came 130th, right? Nothing to write home about. I went out there, and it's only the first time in my life I've suffered from imposter syndrome, where I looked at everyone else around me and went to my wife, everyone here looks really fit except me. You felt like these are real athletes. And you do the race. But what was interesting is it was the first race ever I didn't follow my data. I've got Garmin's out coming out my ears. And I just didn't follow. I wanted to go out there and enjoy it. And in the run up to the race, the enjoyment got taken away a little bit because everyone very friendly and nicely started sending me messages going, Nick, you're going to smash it. You're going to crush it. You're going to do it. And it put loads of pressure on. Well, actually, I knew I could see the athletes around me. I wasn't going to crush it compared to, I wasn't going to come in the top 10, the top 5, nowhere near that level of standard. I was good enough to be on the start line. That's it. And it put pressure on that I didn't need. So I just shut all that out. I closed off my gadgets, closed off the results. And for the first time, genuinely, in 13 years of competition, I actually noticed what was around me while I was racing. So I actually saw the canyons, I saw the road, and I've never come over a finish line happier. And by the way, it was a PB, which I didn't even know. I didn't check my data till the last 3K of the run, the half marathon run at the end. I was like, oh my God, this is my time. I've got a chance of crushing my best time. Finished in 4:47, which was a PB for me. And I've never, ever felt happier. And it was because I closed off my phone, I closed off the outside pressure, and I focused on what was around me, which is all the surroundings, everything else. I made everything else worthwhile. So I think the destination bit is really important. The journey to get there, though, if we go back to that Latin phrase, which is solvitur ambulando, that really helped clear the head, clear the mind. But when I haven't got that goal, that's when I go downhill. My mindset goes downhill. I feel unhealthy. I feel.
Well, I mean, it's interesting when you say it, because I remember when we last met, before the time we just met now, I think maybe you'd come over to my flat and we were doing a podcast together then, actually, back in 2018. I think you just moved and you were driving a lot between that work and home.
That's right. Yeah.
And you put on a bit of weight, right? And you weren't feeling so good. You spent a lot of time in the car, and I don't think you'd had any physical goals at that point in your life. And you could really, and you were explaining to me that, you really felt it. And I think, for you, I mean, definitely this is the thing that's got to work. But what's interesting in your story about, the race you did, the 70.3, and I think for people that don't know, remind us what is the 70.3 Ironman? It's like a half Ironman, right? So it's
so it's 1.9 kilometer swim, 90 kilometer bike ride, and a half marathon to finish.
Great. So that, when you were really in the moment of the race rather than in the result of the race, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And what I love about that is that it's very much, and I can't remember, I know that you've kind of got into meditation and out of it again. I can't remember if you're currently in it or out it, but when we talk about something meditation, I started maybe 11 years ago. It is about being the observer and being present in that moment and being a bit more mindful, rather than doing the thing to get the thing, right? There's a goal to achieve at the end of meditation thing, because the reality is in life is that most of our time is going to be spent on the journey. And I always think about this when I say go on holiday and people are stressing at the airports to get to places. Now, obviously, I don't really travel with kids, so it's a totally different story than if you're traveling with kids. But for me, the holiday starts the moment I'm setting out my front door, not the moment I put my bags down in the hotel and get
100%. Yeah,
because otherwise, if you're always going for that thing, you're going to have that stressful point the whole time. And I'm just like, let's just try and enjoy the journey, because life, and it's so cliche, right? But I always say to people, whenever you hear a cliche, you should pay attention,
There's
because
a
actually,
reason for it, for
yeah, there's
sure.
a reason for it. There's truth to it. And so it is about the journey. And for me, the challenge I've got at the moment is not necessarily having those goals, because I've had various injuries, like significant one in the last few years, and I haven't really kind of pushed myself physically, because I've been still working my body out and seeing what can I do with my knee and everything. And so I don't have the goals. And actually, I haven't run for a long time. I was a bit of a runner, and I liked it. And I haven't probably run properly for about 15 years now. And I still haven't found anything that kind of gives me that feeling of that.
Whether you get it different, to bring this into context for those that don't know you and I do, I'm going to mention a couple of things. The first is on the journey and destination thing. I think it was, I heard it on the High Performance podcast for the first time. It may not be that, but I certainly heard it. It's not mine. I heard it from somewhere else. And it's always stuck with me, which is this. If you climb Everest, the view at the top of Everest, when you've endured weeks on the mountain, altitude sickness, getting yourself, ready, you climb it in all those conditions, you go across Jacob's Ladder, you get to the top, in the view, you're only for 30 seconds, and that view is epic. Like I've never done it, but you can only imagine. I've done Kilimanjaro, so the closest I've got to it is pretty high. And you look around and the view is absolutely epic, because you've taken the journey to get there. And yet, if I was at the top and you helicoptered in and stood next to me on the mountain, we'd be seeing the same picture, but it's a totally different view. And that's what I think, that just listening to that, I don't know what you'd call it, story, idea, has always crystallized itself in my head. That it's the journey. Without that journey, that view is rubbish. The finish, there's no point me doing, someone cheated me with a bus to the end of Ironman, I crossed the finish line. It's not the same as putting the work in, knowing you put the work in. And I'm competing as well. I'm an age group athlete, right? I'm not an elite pro, but I'm competing against other people in my age group that have the same commitments I do. They run businesses, or they work hard, or they've got kids, or they've got other commitments. So they're all trying to find time to train, trying to find the motivation to train, trying to fit in the hours. And I love the fact I'm competing against those people. And 129 of them were better than me in the world champs. Yeah, hats off. They were just better. That's fine. No issue with that. And I think that one of the reasons I could enjoy the race itself was because I wasn't in the top 10. Doesn't really make a difference to me if I'm 130th, 230th, or 80th. They're not numbers. For someone who's texting me going, "You're going to smash it," none of those numbers make any difference to them either. So I could kind of relax. So I was like, I can just enjoy this, which was really, really nice in that particular instance to do. But bringing it back to you, so to bring some interesting context, I do all the running. I get up early, I swim, I cycle, and I find time for all this stuff, which is great. But then, today, no word of a lie, you're gonna laugh. Today, I've already had a donut. I've had some toad in the hole microwave, which was terrible. And usually, I'd like to think actually I'm quite good with my nutrition in terms of not doing anything processed. But my daughter had it, and she only had half, so I had the other half. So that's all really unhealthy. I've had a bag of Monster Munch. I'm not great at my nutrition, and yet you won't travel without a juicer. I mean, look, come on,
that is true. But what I also do is I've had crisps today and chocolates today as well. You'll be pleased to know. But I have also had my smoothie. So what I tend to do is what I call front loading. So I front load my nutrition at the beginning of the day, and the best way I can do that is through. Usually, I'll take my Vitamix with me. So I will travel if I'm going anywhere for more than say three days. I'll take a Vitamix. I was away this weekend actually in Brighton. But my sister recently, about a year ago, bought her own Vitamix finally after she realized she could get her daughter to make soup in there for her. So
they both take commitment, and that's the point. So when you last saw me and I was traveling, yes. So I live in Devon, my office is in Hertfordshire, and at the time, pre-pandemic, I used to commute every other week to St Albans, a long commute. I had no time to do anything else. I got big and unhealthy because my diet didn't change. You can get injured and you still... very healthy, fit individual. You take that bit of your mind and your health really seriously.
And it's really what I was talking about with the group I had before, and it was all about values, right? And what you value most in life. And like, I know that you value health and stuff as well, but I think I would suspect your top values are maybe slightly different to mine. My top values are health and security. And so most of my decisions come from those two things. So by taking my blender, I'm meeting both health and security, because I can be healthy in when I travel, but also I can be secure that I know that I'm going to be able to eat, sustain myself. For example, this weekend, I was going straight to work so I was training all day. So I got up at 5 today. I was in Brighton over the weekend. I left at 6. It took me 2.5 hours to get to the school that I was teaching at today. and included a 40-minute walk. Now that could have been a 6-minute taxi, but because my values are health and security, I'm going to meet my health value by doing a 40-minute walk uphill with a 15-kilo bag, which is actually my main cardio is walking now. And then also security in terms of I know exactly that it's going to take me 40 minutes. I'm not going to get stuck in traffic and I'm not going to spend money and all this and the other. So it met my two top values. And so when you kind of understand your top two values, you kind of worked, it's not really an effort as such because you're going to kind of do that by default. So I took my juicing stuff, my Splendor stuff in like little containers with me, and I used their facilities down there. But actually what I wanted to say, bringing back to your Kilimanjaro thing, not your Kilimanjaro, your Everest thing, I've actually gone to base camp. I think you know that. I'm not sure if you know that.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And I remember when I was on my journey up to base camp, I read a couple of books. I think it was Into Thin Air, and then the other version of that book from the Into Thin Air
Touching
by
the Void, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's Touching the Void, but basically Into Thin Air was the one written by a journalist about this big accident that happened on Everest, Peak Everest. And then there was another version of that book by one of the Sherpas or something, which was actually even better. But anyway, I read both those books whilst going up to Everest Base Camp. And previously I had aspirations of climbing Everest at one point. And after reading those two books, I was like, yeah, you know what? I think I'm okay. I don't think I want to do it. But also, you know, talking about looking back at where you've come and how climbing Everest is much more satisfying than taking a helicopter. I distinctly remember on one of our trips, cycle trips, where we were doing this ridiculous hill. I can't remember, it was probably around 2015. There was a really, really, really steep hill, but it was a long hill.
Yeah.
It was a really long hill. And I actually...
It might be in Italy, no? With a long one.
I can't remember. I did a video about it, so it's somewhere on my YouTube channel. But I remember I was grinding and probably all I was doing, I think I was probably behind you, because you're always like first up the hills anyway. So I was behind you, and I was working so hard, and I was doing so well because I was like, oh, I'm, you know, caning it, and I was actually not keeping pace exactly with you, but you were in my sights, right? And I was so happy with that. I was focused on the goal, which was like staying on your wheel. Then I just, at one point I looked behind me, and then I saw the amazing view that I had. And I thought and in that moment, it was literally in that moment, it snapped inside of me. It's like, sometimes we can be so hard grinding for the thing that we've got.
Yeah.
But we don't realize where we've come from and just to step and take a look at it all. And that really, I don't know, really affected me, that specific moment. I was like, actually, unfortunately, I started to slow down a bit, and I dropped off a bit because I was like, actually, you know what? Am I here to really get up the hill and beat the other guys and prove my fitness or whatever when they're younger than me? Or am I here to just enjoy what I want to enjoy, you know? And I think that I just find like a lot of sports are metaphor for life, right? A lot of sports and activities are metaphors for life. And so now I think I'm just more about enjoying that than get the next.
What makes me laugh by that story, like, just for those, I mean, people are listening to this or watching this won't know the group that come. Typically on these cycling trips, most people that come are not cyclists. They come because we tend to have a bit of alcohol after the rides. They're usually a little bit, well, they're planned by me, right? So a little bit bag packing kind of done. We don't know where we're going to end up. We don't know what we're going to come across. We've cycled into military zones and all sorts because of my planning, which kind of add to it really. It's the experience of the cycles themselves. But there were two guys that always cycled together up those hills, and we were talking about mindset. What I love, and it always makes me laugh when I watch them, is they just say to each other all the way up the hill, "I'll quit if you quit. I'll quit if you quit." They both say to each other, they go all the way up. They don't look at the view. They're hating every minute of it. And they're just baiting each other the whole way. I'll quit. Go, you ready to quit? Go on, if you quit, I'll quit. I'll stop if you stop. And they don't. Every time they trundle up slowly but surely with that mindset of, I'll quit. I love that. Totally different mindset to mine, but it's an interesting.
I mean, it's interesting, yeah, because that's what I'm always curious about, what goes on in your head, right? When you're cycling. What does go on in your head when you're like kind of cycling up a grinding hill? Are you saying something to yourself? Are you just breathing? What are you doing?
I mean, it changes. I need to look at the view more often. It's definitely a point. Slow down to speed up. What you did when you look back at the view. I think I'm so data driven, as you know. Like, I've got gadgets that will tell me how fast I've done a similar hill in the past, and I'll try and beat my own records. It's all about me beating myself.
You're not saying something, because I've and actually it was quite interesting because I was with my niece at the weekend, and I've been teaching her a little bit about self-talk and things. So, for example, one of the things that I say to myself up those hills a lot of the time, and I like a 4 count beat, right?
Yeah.
So with each step, I'll be saying things like in my head, like getting stronger, getting faster. This
And I don't
is
do that.
yeah.
No.
So I do things like that, and
That would just
and
remind me that I'm struggling. So I'm
yeah,
the other
that's
way
what I'm
around.
curious to know, because you're obviously
Yeah,
very
no.
good, but and I just feel like in your head it's just like a blank
No, no,
head.
no. I'm all about goals. So I'll be looking at right and get to that tree without slowing down. Right now, I've got to the tree. I'm gonna get to that fence post without slowing down. I'm gonna get to that bend without slowing down. And I'll just pick and pick and pick until eventually, okay, I'm knackered now. I'm gonna get to that bit, and I'm not gonna slow down more than X. And then I'll look at my data to see I'm gonna get that in 5 seconds. I've done it in 4. Right, the next bit. I'm just constantly knocking off the goals.
Right,
But
yeah, that's why you're so
pretty
far. I mean, actually,
depressing
I
way
did
of doing
something
it because I'm not
similar.
enjoying the ride at all.
Yeah, I did something similar. I think it was probably my best 10K, or well, I think it was the Nike. It was a Nike 10K or something in Richmond back in 2003, long time ago, 20 years ago now. And I did something similar with, I would pick a person, and my goal was to get past them. Pick a person, goal to get past them.
Yeah.
And actually, I was fantastically fast on that run doing that. So I kind of vary it a little bit, but I do find that when I do something like a rhythm or a talk or like that, because a lot of the time I find myself previously, years and years ago, I'd be doubting myself when I say I can't do it. Like I remember when I used to do cross-country running at school and things like that, and I would always be thinking, oh, they're faster. The things that were going through my head would be like, oh, they're faster than me, or I'm not as fit, or I haven't trained, or
and you immediately set yourself a new objective. Actually, it doesn't matter if I finish in this time. Actually, I was hoping to finish in 45, but I'll finish in 50. That's
yeah. And there's all that negative self-talk. Whereas the people, because as you know, like when you get to a certain level of performance, right, it's not about the physical, right? It's more the mental that's going to get you through. Like I think it was Rafa Nadal who I remember reading talking about, like the top 50 tennis players, right, on the practice courts. You can't guess who's going to win on those practice courts, right?
Well, he's renowned for losing his first set as well, isn't he? He always wins. He's the comeback king.
Well, there you go. Because he is like militant, right? I read his book a few years ago. It's quite good. And but like when you get onto the real thing, it is that mindset. It's that mindset that's going to carry you through, and that self-talk of saying, you know, you can do it versus you can't do it.
A lot of it's external versus internal motivating factors. I'll give a good example, I think, of my own experience last year. So I did Ironman in 2012, and I did it in 10:45 in Switzerland. And I decided my goal this year was to prove that I'm fitter and healthier in my 40s than I was in my 30s, and that the body is as fit as you want it to be. And that was just something I wanted to do. So turned 40 due to the pandemic, should have been the year before, but so at 41, I decided to go do another Ironman in Estonia this year. And I wanted to go under 10 hours. But interestingly, talking about that, when you say yes, what do you say no to? So I would say typically it's about 6 hours into an Ironman is when your mindset just starts to question everything. It was absolutely hammering it down with rain in the stone. The weather was ridiculous. You can see the pictures on Facebook, whatever. Really, really torrential rain. So you're pretty miserable. You're out on your own, not allowed to draft, so you're completely isolated on your own, cycling for miles and miles. And a full Ironman, by the way, is double the distance as we mentioned earlier. So this is 180 kilometers, 112 miles on the bike, followed by a marathon at the end. So 6 hours in, my head is like setting new goals all the time. It's trying to. Actually, it doesn't matter if you don't go under 10 hours, Nick. Under 11 is fine. Let's just beat what you did in Switzerland. I wanted to go under 10, but actually just 10:40 would be fine. It's 5 minutes quicker. And you have all these questions. What I thought to myself was this. It was like, look, I've given up hours upon hours upon hours of time with my family. You know, sitting on a turbo trainer, which is not much fun, for 4 or 5 hours at a time at weekends, running in the rain, swimming, which I hate, in the sea, which I hate even more. I'm petrified of jelly, but putting myself through things I'm not happy doing because I wanted to get myself to this point. If I let all that get in the way, I know what will happen. I'll come to the finish line. I'll instantly feel terrible, and I'll instantly sign up for another one to beat the time I've aimed for this year, which is going to put my family through the whole thing again. If I get it done now, I don't have to revisit this. I probably will revisit it in my 50s, and I'll probably try and do something similar again. But for at least 10 years, I haven't got to revisit it. And it was pushing. I saw my wife. She was supporting me on the run. And I won't lie, I was pretty miserable. I wasn't particularly polite. She was like, go, Nick. You know, I'm like, don't talk to me. You know, it's just all in your head. You're tired. Everything's burning. Everything's saying, stop, stop, stop. I ended up going under 10 hours by 3 minutes. I would have taken 1 second. 9:59, I'd have taken it all day long. But pushing through and knowing that I don't have to now do that training again. I haven't got to put my family through it. I haven't got to put myself through it. It was a much bigger motivating factor than the idea that I can cut it by 5 minutes. So I do think
Yeah,
sometimes we've got that external versus internal, and you've got a real
that
reason, a real why.
short-term pain for long-term gain. What's that? I can't remember. It's like Muhammad Ali says, like, suffer now and live gloriously forever, or whatever the thing. There's some sort of like phrase like that, and I think that's interesting. Like, you put yourself in that mindset to say, look, if I go to 10:40, I suddenly have, it's not that I've lost 40 minutes, I've suddenly lost another year of training because I've got to go and do it all over again. And your wife is like probably the most supportive wife I know.
She's pretty supportive, yeah. And also, she said yes. So what she said no to, she's given me permission to do this, and I say permission, but she's been fully supportive.
Yeah.
And in her doing that, she's saying no to not having a husband around, and I don't want to put her through that again either. And yeah, having her there was amazing at the World Champs. Having her there at all my races is amazing. It's a real motivating factor. I just think, something completely separate, but I'll mention it. This is how we work. Things have popped in my head. You were talking about the mountain piece. I don't know if you know the story about Tenzing Norgay, who I think it says Tenzing Norgay. Is that right? Sherpa, a lot of things.
Edmund
yeah, you may know the story because it was he did a podcast I was listening to a while ago. It wasn't him recounting; someone was recounting on his behalf. But either way, the story was this: took a load of people up to Everest, and when you go to Everest, you always put your oxygen tanks, if you're going with oxygen, you hide it away, and it's against the law to ever remove that oxygen because obviously it's lifetime. People rely on it when they come back down the mountain. And he came back down, and someone had taken the oxygen. And of course, the party he was with, their mindset completely went. They were like, "What are we going to do? We're going to die on the mountain. How could someone do this?" Really, really panic. And Tenzing Norgay turned and said, "Look, we don't know why the oxygen's gone. It's very easy for us to say someone has taken and stolen it, and for us to feel like that's a real bad thing. But let's just change the narrative. We don't know that oxygen wasn't taken to save someone's life. All of us are healthy right now. I believe we can get off the mountain. And the way to think about it is, look, let's not look at what someone else has got, what someone else has done. Let's just take the assumption. Let's create our own narrative, our own story, our own mindset that says whoever took that oxygen probably needed it more than we do. And let's carry on down the mountain." He got everyone off the mountain, by the way. And it was a mindset shift of not panicking what I haven't got. Someone's taking it now. I'm not going to finish the race because I've got a puncher or whatever it is. It's going, okay, there are worse things. Maybe this has gone to a really good thing. Maybe, all the maybes. And I love that. That story for me really resonated because I know my immediate reaction would be exactly not his, by the way, being the others. Oh no, I'm gonna die on a mountain. I've got family at home, kids.
And that's
actually,
fine. I mean, that might be the natural reaction, but then it's stepping back and then going, what else could this mean? Right. And because at the end of the day, we create assumptions and stories in our life about things, right? Someone doesn't text you, like, to put it back to a real example that maybe people can like relate to, you text someone and then they don't text you back. Right. And you've seen the 2 blue ticks, right? So in your head, they've read the message and they don't text you back. But the reality is you don't know for sure. You know that the message has appeared on their phone, right? Maybe someone else looked at their phone. Maybe they looked at the message. They said, we're going to come back to it later. And where's the rule that you have to reply straight away anyway, or whatever the thing is. But we create a story. Oh, that person doesn't care. That person's ignoring me. That person's upset with me. But we have no idea, right? And, like Tenzing said, right, maybe that person needed it more. Now, again, that's a made up story as well, because he's made that up.
Absolutely. But let's assume the positive.
But make up the one that serves you, right? Because you're going to make it up anyway. So you might as well and actually by doing that, you put yourself in a more of a calm state. So you're going to require less oxygen anyway than if you're like in a stressed, anxious, flustered state. So yeah, I really resonate with that because I think we do a lot of this in our lives where we make assumptions about situations and people. We have these big stories, these beliefs about situations, and they're not necessarily.
Your text story actually happened to me literally this week. So my dad, unfortunately, is as stage 4 cancer, right? So he's giving us an update on his care and how he's feeling and where he is with his cancer. And I got a message update that just said, this is where I am. These are the tests. And I was driving. So I can read it, but I got Eva, who's my daughter, she's 13. She was sat next to me. I said, "Can you just check who the message is from?" She goes, "Oh, it's from your dad." So can you just read it to me? I was like, "Great." So she read the message, and I was like, "Oh, brilliant! I'm really glad to know it's good." For me, it answered the question. He told me where he was. It was positive news. Of course, I can't respond. I'm driving. So I was doing a drive, which the best part of a 2-hour drive. I didn't get back to him for ages, but of course, actually, he didn't give any assumptions to me. He was waiting, but in my own head, I finished the car and thought, "Oh my God, he must have wondered why I haven't responded." He didn't wonder at all, by the way. He was perfectly cool with it. He assumed I was probably doing something. But it made me think, actually, as the text receiver, oh, I haven't responded, but he's going to think I just don't care. It wasn't reality. I was just driving, and that was it. And it's funny how we make these stories up in our own minds, and they're not always true.
Even when you know this, you still do this. Like this is the funny thing with a lot of the things that you're learning, I've learned, whatever, and what I'm still learning, is that we might know these things, but we still slip into the old patterns or the old ways. And so I guess this is also something for listeners to bear in mind when, neither you or I are perfect in like lots of things, right? And we're still kind of learning and still growing and everything else. And I think people can get caught up by thinking like, oh, I've learned, I don't know, about gratitude or mindset, and like, why am I still angry, or why am I still this, that, the other? Like, yeah, because it's a process. It's never done. We're always working on ourselves. And when I come and speak to a client, sometimes I often find that the client that I've got in front of me is sharing something with me that I need to learn again myself, or be reminded of myself. And so I think it's just worth bearing that in mind, that we're not, we're always a work in progress. And even if though we might know these things, we're still going to fall into the trap of like, oh, why didn't they text me back, or blah, 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 even though, then you pause yourself. This is what I was explaining to my students today. So I explain a little bit about nerves a lot of time, and how to deal with nerves. And this relates to what we've been talking about. But one of the truisms of life, right, fundamental truths of life, is that nothing means anything except for the meaning you give it. Okay. So nothing means anything you give it. So you choose to give it meaning. So I say to people, when you feel like nervous and you get like those butterflies in your stomach and your heart beating quicker, you notice that and you choose that it means you're nervous. But equally, if you were on a fun fair going a roller coaster, you'd have those same feelings and you would choose that it means excitement or anticipation or whatever. But the reality is that the body's just giving you signals and you're choosing the meaning. But I say to them, that happens very quickly. And usually I try and make it relatable to what they know. So I say, like, when you watch a YouTube video and you've got autoplay on and it goes to the next video straight away because you're like busy doing the dishes or tidying up your bag. What do you do if you start hearing that video play and you don't want to watch it? You pause it and skip to the next video or whatever. So your internal YouTube system is on autoplay and it's gone to that video of whatever the thought is. And the trick is to recognize that and not beat yourself up for going there because it was on autoplay, it went there automatically. But when it goes there, in those first 5-10 seconds or whatever, you just pause it and say, well, you know what, maybe this doesn't mean that they're upset with me or blah, blah, blah. And actually what's really helped me, and this is a topic for another conversation, is that whole practice of mindfulness, meditation, and being aware of your thoughts as they're happening. In those moments, not all the time, it's impossible, but at those points, and you go, actually, and you kind of look at it from the observer point of view, like you're watching it literally, you're not in the YouTube video, you're watching the YouTube video, and you pause it and say, it means something else.
On this, buddy, we fully agree. I'm a big fan, I mentioned, of a guy called Sydney Banks who talks about mind, thought, and consciousness, but it's the idea that we're if this resonates with people, it resonates with me massively, right? We're the thinker, not the thought.
Yeah.
That's the really important bit. We're not a psychology, right? The thought is what dictates how we feel about it. But just because we think a thought doesn't mean we are the thought, and we can change that around. We're the thinker, not the sum of our thoughts either. If we can change our thoughts, we can change who we are. We can change how we feel about things. And definitely for another show. But I think we're agreed on how powerful the thought can be and how powerful we can change our feelings. We can change our circumstances if we're able to change that narrative.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think the analogy I tend to give to people often is that, I mean, we're really the receiver. So I will say, like, the TV does not have the TV program in it, right? It's receiving that program and it's just displaying that program, but it's not the program. It's not got the people in it. It's not the pro. So we are receivers and we're just tuning into whatever it is. And if we tune into a different frequency, we'll receive something different, but we can turn it off. It comes, it goes. It's
like just the news. You watching something that's happening, let's say that the catastrophic earthquakes have happened in Turkey. You can watch the same news item. It could make you terribly sad. You could be in tears. It can make me incredibly angry because I'm interpreting the response to it. It can make someone else, feel something completely different. We're all watching this. Yeah, we're all watching the same thing. It's just that we're receiving it and interpreting it in different ways.
It's never the thing. It's always your response to the thing. That's what I say. I mean, even when it comes to actually, like certain viruses and illnesses, right? It's not actually often the virus that does the damage. It's the body's response to the virus that does the damage. Because if it was the thing, the response would be the same in everybody a lot of the time, but it's actually not. It's the response that that person has to those certain pathogens or whatever it might be that is creating like an inflammatory response or this, that, the other. So it's always the response. And I don't think you've read this book yet. I can't remember. You might have done, but it's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I can't remember if you've read that.
No, I haven't.
Great, but have you heard of it? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've heard it. I know it's Frankel.
So,
Yeah.
I think he says somewhere along the lines of like the last of the. So he was, for those of you listening that are not familiar, he was a prisoner of war in Auschwitz and a bunch of other and a few other prisons as well. And he was also the founder of, was it psychotherapy or something? One of these kind of he came up with one of these concepts. But anyway, logotherapy, that's it. So basically logos means, I guess, meaning in Greek. So it's about man's meaning, right? What's our meaning? And he said that so he was put in prison, and he said like they took away all the
I know the quote you're going to. It's quite a famous quote, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but he says like the last of the human's freedoms is man's ability to choose one's thinking in any given circumstance, and really that's it. It's always our response to things, and it's and not the thing itself that's really important. And I do choose to do my best to remember that as much as possible. And
here we go. I've got it for you. I've just very quickly used my little search. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And we are no longer able to change a situation. We are challenged to change ourselves.
Well, that might be a nice place to leave it. I'm not sure, but we've come in up on an hour. But
I'll tell you what, I'm going to finish with one thing because I'm slightly disappointed. It's our first episode, Harry.
Oh, yes.
Right? We've never met together, and I've got this nicely lit, prepared space, and I can barely see you. You look like you're hidden in something from the Blair Witch Project. Talk to me. What's going on with your home setup? This is something you do for a living.
So this is the thing, right? So normally I would be wearing for about 8 years now, consistently from about sort of 6, 7 o'clock on most evenings, depends on different time of the year, I wear blue light blocking glasses, right? And they
encouraged me to get. Hold on, I've got some of those. Yeah. You encouraged me to buy some of these.
I've got
some yellow ones as well.
Yeah, I could say I've got some I've got red ones, I've got yellow ones. Most of mine are wraparound though, so they don't allow any light to bleed in through the edges, which is, I think, key. And so I'd be wearing those right now, but then I was like, oh, if we're doing this on video, maybe I won't do that. So the light that is actually on, so all the lights that I've got on in the evening, when I do have them on, are side lights and are nice. And they are special light bulbs that don't have blue light in them. So they're stripped out anyway. So the light that's currently shown in my office here is a small light, which has got without the blue light, because I didn't want to wear the glasses in case.
I'll let you off.
It's too weird for our thing.
Still think your video could do with some white light in there that we can see it better. So these are the glasses. This is a good example of gadgets. I bought these on your recommendation, and typically, whatever I spent on them, they live on my shelf. And I think I've worn them maybe twice. I should wear them more actually. But
I'm addicted to them. If you come around to my house in the evening, people think I'm super crazy because there's no lights on, and I have these wraparound sunglasses on. And I take them. That's something I do take with me when I go traveling as well, because usually and typically in other people's houses, they have bright lights and they turn the lights on in the bathroom and in the hallway. I was with my sisters and they turn the lights on in the hallway just as they go to bed to walk up the stairs. I'm like, firstly, it's your own house. You should know how to get up the stairs without the lights on. But like, it's just so bright. So I just have these really red ones on. And I was watching the movie with them last night, and I'm like, everything's red. Like the whole movie's red. And I'm like, I don't care, because otherwise it's too bright. And actually my eyes hurt. And actually, even right now, I feel quite wired. So I'm going to have to, when we get off our call, I'm going to have to like down regulate and, just chill it out.
I'll probably put a pizza in the oven and crack on.
Oh no, I've eaten. I like to eat by 6, so I got in at 5:30. I had 30 minutes. Luckily, my mum had brought around some food for me because I've been on the go since 6 a.m., 5 a.m. this morning.
I don't eat before 9:30. I mean, this is where we differ, right?
Really? Yeah, I mean,
I do have,
we
you may have
have a
spotted I got
conversation.
another gadget here as well, which we can talk about another show.
I love it. Yeah, I've got a back thing for
yeah.
like to open up the chest as well, recent one and everything.
Yeah,
but right upstanding, right? So
you got a juice in hand. Well, I think it's probably a good time to end first episode. Hopefully, this has given listeners a bit of an insight into who you are, how we met 10 years ago on a random invite to whoever wants to join me on a cycle trip, and you were one of those people, and we've stayed friends ever since. We've debated ever since on many topics, which I'm sure we'll look forward to bringing to the listeners over the course of time. But yeah, I've enjoyed today's conversation. Hopefully, listeners have too. Tune into the next episode, and we'll be tackling. I think we're going to tackle ChatGPT. We're going to tackle thoughts. We're going to tackle nutrition, exercise, gadgets.
Everything is going to help you. Everything is going to help you. Tune in, and you'll learn lots, I'm sure.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Harry. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers. Bye bye.